Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Young. I'm the owner and founder of Adaptive Perspective and the Adaptive Perspective social media platforms. And I am back to talk about our stock market. Our stock market, there we go, investment strategy using closed-end funds. So to get the normal disclaimers out of the way, this is an unedited raw video, as you've already seen. You've seen me make, I think, at least one mistake so far. And who knows what else you'll hear in the background as I film these in my house. I am not a financial advisor. I am a strategist and a financial strategist. And I don't speak like the herd. I walk in limited company, and sometimes I walk alone. Um, I have a script in front of me, and I really don't want to say the same thing week to week, but uh, I need your help, and I don't want to just read the script to you either. But I need your help. Um, my goal is to It's a twofold goal. One, I make these videos to tell other people what I'm doing, almost in a sense of justifying what I'm doing, because now I have to explain it to other people. It's not just my own rationale in my head, but I have to be able to communicate it in words and have it make sense. And that's a lot harder than you think. The other part is to help people because there is a much better way than investing in equity and hoping for growth. Um, and I've said it before, I'll continue saying it. The whole adage of, but buy Apple now because it'll be worth 10% more in 5 years is really shitty advice. That's 2% growth a year, which is less than inflation. 10% sounds amazing, but over that 5 year period, 10% growth is just 2% a year. And if you ever believe the Fed, which why would you? But if you ever believe the Fed, inflation is always higher than what the Fed says. So we'll just say maybe at one point they'll say, hey, we did our jobs and inflation is 2%. But it's always higher than that. So even at 0%, I still think inflation hits at 3 or 4%. So by that metric, 2% growth a year is really a 2% loss every year. And that's really just not great investing, especially because Apple itself really doesn't pay a dividend. You're going to pay more for the stock than what it's really worth. And there's a lot of other factors of that. So there is a better way, and that's investing into closed-end funds because you can get Apple and Samsung and Taiwan Semiconductor and Amazon and Alphabet and all of these other amazing funds instead of paying the fund price. You pay a much smaller price, honestly. You pay a much lower price that gets you access to all of these other funds who pay 8% plus in dividends monthly, uh, which just is a much better deal. So instead of buying solely on the hope of equity, which even if you gain it, you're losing it through inflation. So even with the hope of equity, closed-end funds are better because you were still buying for growth. Everybody wants growth, right? But closed-end funds pay 8% plus dividends a month, and that's an actual retirement plan. I mean, so instead of racking up 500,000 or a million or even sub that, say like $200,000, instead of racking all that money up just to gradually sell it off, now we're racking all that money up with the goal, right, with the perspective of targeted buying to where we keep our principal intact and watch it grow. Now, yes, the market fluctuates, right? But to watch our principal grow and keep it intact and use dividends off our invested principal to then generate a supplemental income or a full retirement income. That's much better than slowly or quickly selling off and devaluing your invested principal, whether that be 200, 300, 400,000, or a lot more than that. So if you would help me hack YouTube and spread the word, like the videos, comment on the videos, share the videos, and help other people find a much better way to invest than the traditional stock advice. So this week, and I've used the lingo the last 2 weeks, we are still very much reading the tea leaves. We're trying to take a much broader perspective, much broader vantage point than trying to identify every single coffee ground or tea ground, tea leaf inside the cup. We're trying to take a much bigger, pulled back perspective to really see the shapes inside the cup. and not much has changed. I mean, yeah, we've seen a little bit here and there financially, but not much has changed. Biggest thing is the Fed is still enjoying their power trip. They're still enjoying their use of leverage, and we're still watching Congress battle it out on how to best help Americans. And that they're still arguing on cutting taxes is really about the most outrageous issue I've seen. Um, I mean, since when are cutting taxes a bad thing? And you could argue, well, then we'd have to cut more of the budget. And again, like we have a bloated budget as it is. So since when is cutting taxes a bad thing? Along with that, despite Texas's very obvious red streak, my state government, Texas government officials, are less red-blooded and more akin to sellouts because they refuse to do nothing to address the rising property taxes in our state. They did next to nothing to help teachers. Now, you could argue they did help teachers, but it's compared to what they could have done because the budget is fat. There is a ton of bloat in the Texas budget. So instead of addressing the rising property taxes or, you know, significantly helping teachers across the state, we really continue to blow the extra in the budget on self-enriching pork projects um, and everything. Though we have some good representatives in our state government. The problem is we have a lot of bad representatives in our state government who are more intent upon themselves and less intent upon Texans. And if it's bad in Texas, I know it's bad in California and New York and every other liberal bulwark out there. And since the government's acting exactly as big government does, meaning it's protecting itself, then you and I have to entrust our own care to ourselves. And I'll admit that's scary. At least it used to be scary to me. It's not as scary anymore because I took on the ownership of controlling our funds and I took on the ownership of investing it ourselves. And that's scary because for a lot of you, somebody else does it for you. And I'll admit there's a lot to learn, and I'll admit that I don't know everything, but I know a lot more now than when we started 3 to 4 years ago. And we're in a better position now than we were three to 4 years ago. We're in a heck of a lot better position since we left our last brokerage firm, because that guy was for sure making us broker than he was. And I get self-investment is scary, but now everything is in your hands. And some people run from that responsibility. And I feel the weight of that responsibility, which makes me a really cautious investor. Um, and it makes me really evaluate every investment we're pursuing, whether in the market or outside of it. So I'm always, yeah, I mean, I really, regardless of your level of comfort, I'm of the opinion that you can probably do a better job of your own retirement versus the government. Government's in it for the government. You're in it for you. Who do you think's more motivated to succeed? The government wants itself to succeed. I don't care, red, blue state, purple, indifferent. Okay, the government's job is to perpetuate the government. Your job is to care for yourself. Are you going to safeguard your money better than somebody else? Hell yeah. So if you're scared of taking on your own investments, if you're scared of doing the work yourselves, it's honestly a good place to start because that inherent fear makes you want to do a really good job. Now, you can also let that inherent fear just tie your hands and bind you up. That's not what we're doing here at all, right? We're not living in fear, fearing fear. We're not doing that. It's an acknowledgement of this could go horribly wrong. So the goal is therefore to make it as best as we can, which which is why I want to say this wrong. In the sense of my goal in making these videos is to not talk like the other guys. I mean, my goal is to not sugarcoat it. My goal is to be completely transparent. We've made investments that have not gone well. We've done things that have gone amazingly well. I'm completely transparent in what we buy. I'm completely transparent of why we're buying what we're buying. But the whole purpose of that is, I mean, I don't trust the government retirement, because if you let the government define what you need, it's going to be a very different definition of how you define need. What you need and want is how you feel about what you need and want. What the government thinks you need is a very different story. So I challenge you and I encourage you, do your own self-directed retirement. Now you can still have a broker so long as that broker's open to you directing your funds. But I would challenge you to go one step further. Take on the ownership and the management of your own funds, because if you can take the broker out of things, now you're cutting out the middleman in a sense, in essence, and you're not paying that person anymore. By not paying a broker, you have more money to invest. And if you really stretch it, I mean, yeah, you could say you're paying yourself, but since you're not actually paying yourself a salary, now you just have more money to invest, right? So always learn or never stop learning. Always look at other stuff, always be challenged, always be willing to learn more, which is really a lot of what I'm going to talk about once we get into things tonight. I think the biggest, it's hard to define the one single thing that really propelled us forward into a self-managed experience. But the end goal of that is being able to really control all of our finances to where we're in charge. And it's not somebody else's strategy, and it's not failed strategy, and it's not traditional strategy. It's our strategy. And honestly, everything is in our hands, and that's what I want. So think something you might not know. In addition to this closed-end fund system that I'm going to get into again this week, I I also developed a an everyday financial system that is end to end, in the sense that the 12 steps to financial freedom walks with you as you move from a debt-based personal income, and then walks with you forward into business finances and then investments. And the ebook is in the works. And included in that book is the entire closed-end fund strategy, which is one of the videos I still owe you. And I am very aware of that. It's one of it's one of the things that weighs upon me. Y'all ask for stuff, and I need to respond and make the stuff. And last week I was at a conference, and it really ate more of my time than I realized it would, and I didn't make the videos, and that bothers me because on my end of things, that doesn't sit well. So I owe you some videos. Additionally, a couple people have asked for access, which I'm working on that. And to be quite honest, it's always been my hope. It's always been my goal, my plan, my however you want to say it, to market the closed-end fund list and have access to it. I love helping people be, I love helping people manage money. I like helping people manage risk. I like helping people strategize. Now, I don't necessarily want to touch somebody else's money. That's not the point. But I like talking strategy and looking for ways to improve systems. I like designing systems that improve efficiency. And I like helping people with that. But as much as I like helping people with that, I really like closed end fund and stock market investment, and then bigger picture investment strategies like rental property and specific business investments. But all together, it does make up a 12-step book. And in my process of starting this company and doing financial advice and financial strategy and the different components of that, I have not found a great hosting medium. And I operated for a while on Facebook, Instagram, and I just do not get along. YouTube is great for video content, but I don't know its capability regarding hosting a specific file or a specific spreadsheet, but even if it could, I can't post that stuff until I reach a certain membership or a certain subscriber. So unless somebody comes back with a comment of something else I should try, I mean, which I've looked at a lot, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Notion. Used to own a blog. I used to operate a blog. The blog is a pain in the rear. Um, so outside of all those things, Facebook seems like the best place, and it's also a place where I could try to uh, better streamline the process between the overall 12 steps. Uh, I talk about scholarships, of how to use scholarships in college, uh, or really whether you're post grad or not, but how to use scholarships to really scale your investments. But to talk about the overall system and scholarships and closed-end funds and how it all fits together. So Facebook might be the best place for that, but I still got to figure that out. So my book is nearing the final edit or its final edit, and I'll post it when it's ready. The Facebook group, I have a current Facebook group, but it doesn't share the same title as the book, and that same thing. I'm working on how best to streamline this and organize it best. So if I can get it all lined out and set up the way I want, then I will talk about that and display it when it's ready. And at this point, I would normally review all the financial update news for the week, but not much has really changed. And I'll be honest. I mean, I could talk about any number of things, but let's take a break from the normal and do things a bit differently. I mean, I can go back and review things next week, but this week let's do it a little bit differently. So instead of reviewing all the info from the past couple of weeks that I've done the past 2 weeks, the end result remains the same. I mean, the strategy for now is it's still very much a bond proxy, and bond related market. So let's look at how we can continue to use that strategy in the current market for the best long term gains. And as soon as I share my screen, you're going to notice I have a lot more tabs open than normal. And I'll get to that. Just bear with me. And I don't know if I've actually set this up well or not. I don't, I know I made the spreadsheet. There's my notes. Oh, look, I did set this up well. So this is the closed end fund master. Uh, updated everything. Um, Updated share cost, the current net asset value. It went back through and looked at all the dividends to make sure the dividends are accurate. So it's a complete system update that I do once a month. And that's an interesting thing at the bottom. Yeah. Oh, look, more stuff that you get to see. Um, I don't. I honestly hope that didn't have any info on there. Perfect. You get to see another fun event of raw video. I'm currently trying to help my daughter with her Texas driver's license. So, or getting her Texas driver's license. So you saw all the other tabs. My apologies. Um, Closed end fund wise, this is the most current updated version of closed end funds. Um, and we move that over to this spreadsheet, and we end up with a triple asterisk target list and these additional asterisks that are municipal bonds that we already own. So we're still looking at the same thing. We're still looking at bonds, bond proxies, bond related stuff. So that's bonds, loans, BDCs, utilities and energy transfer, real estate, and tech, pending its cost, depending on uh, where we're looking in the current market versus where we're looking long term of how we think the market is going, or where we think the market is headed. So let's see. Brief review. Triple asterisks are significant discounts individualized for every fund. So the data for HFRO is related to HFR alone. It's not related to its sister fund, HGLB. And the existing discount is then this discount is related to its overall historical discount, and then we come up with a significant difference between the existing discount and the historical discount. That gets thrown off a little bit with newer companies like BRW and Saba were bought out and restructured. FCO was a private company who came public, so it's got a slightly different leniency to it as well. Uh, so first things first, every fund is significant, or as it relates to the municipal bonds, they're great buys based on the dollar cost average of those funds for us. So outside of the targets, we sort by dividend policy. The goal is monthly. The stuff that I would consider quarterly, like really the only quarterly fund that I'm really interested in at the moment is ADX, uh, which is a blue chip ETF powerhouse. Um, and it's if you look at its track record, it has a phenomenal track record. Its dividends seem to be normalizing a little bit, or at least spreading out for the rest. It used to be it's an off or an alternate off category two. They pay dividends 2, 5, 8, and 12. And it used to be 5 cents, 5 cents, 5 cents in this massive end of year dividend. But they've shifted that recently to something like 45 cents, 45 cents, 47 cents. And then I don't know what the December dividend payment will be now. Excuse me. They could keep it with that massive dividend at the end of the year, or we could watch the dividend normalize and kind of spread out the rest of the year. I don't know. Uh, and it pays a great dividend right now, but it's not going to pay another dividend until August. And it's kind of early to buy that. And it's also the current discount doesn't really meet with the metric for the company. It's an exception to the asterisk rule. I'll come over that way you can see things. ADX. So we're looking for it to be around this average as opposed to tracking the historical data. So if we pay attention to this discount when it hovers around that spot, like when it's at or exceeds that, that's a great time to buy. But currently it's at 6.8%, which is not really near 11%. So I mean, it's closer to 11% than zero. Nope, still closer to zero. Um, you could argue that it's closer to 11%. Yeah, it's closer to 11% than zero. But at the same time, it's not a great deal overall. So even though Mario Gabelli runs this, I'm not a huge quarterly fan, outside of some exceptions, or really one exception. So now we have all monthly payers. I like to look at the overall yield, and I want 9% or better unless there's a good reason to pick it. Like these municipal bonds pay a higher rate. They pay a tax equivalent dividend based upon your tax bracket, which for our tax bracket, it sits around 10 and a half on uh, their tax equivalent dividends. So even though it's posted at 8, it's really around 10, 10 and a half. So we delete these. NDXG, when we bought it, paid a better dividend. Does not pay a better dividend now because the price per share went up and the dividend stayed the same. And HFRO will make the list because it's still the steepest dividend. I still see light at the end of their tunnel. And I think that's realistic natural light, not a freight train. And the share price is still down. Uh, the dividend has stayed consistent, but the share price is still down. So they are they're looking honestly, they're looking at a lot of different ways to narrow the discount between buybacks and adding a preferred share. I want to say they added a specific, you could have them buy your shares back for uh, like I don't want to say a trade in kind, but you could essentially trade your regular shares for a ratio to preferred shares, stock buyback, and then I mean, it's the current market. Everybody's hoping for a Fed rate cut. And their portfolio is not all online. Like it's still in the process of being built. So the more square footage they get active, and gosh, if we could ever get a rate cut, that'd be amazing. All right, so if we're prioritizing bonds, that means we're also not prioritizing. So if we're prioritizing bonds and their proxies and related investments, that means we're also skipping over stocks. So we skip here. CIF is great. They still pay a really great dividend, but it's a roller coaster investment, meaning we bought it low, knowing and hoping and knowing that the roller coaster ride up would be bumpy on the dividend end, but at the same time, a slow escalation back into where we hope its top value is, where we would sell it, and then it would drop off again. We bought it in the Roth, we don't own it in the cash account. FSCO, bonds, HLB, bonds, and other stuff, which I've talked at least the past two videos about. Like I like the fund, but I don't like what they've done investment wise. Now that being said, on my druthers, or my list of druthers, their overall value has gone up. Um, so it'll stay on this list. EIC is new, and I had a specific guy to thank. So whoever that is, thank you for pointing that one out. And it's as it says, it's got a really high amount of securitized holdings, and that would include collateralized loan obligations, which we're going to get into. River has a mix of things we already have. So on my end of things, it's never something I've been willing to pay for. It's more than what we already have that sits in the same category. Fixed income, high bond allocation. It also invests in BlackRock, which is not high on my list, versus BRW invests in BlackRock, but it's for a different angle. BRW invests in BlackRock in order to change BlackRock's board to where it's more shareholder friendly. I like that angle. I don't want to invest in BlackRock just to invest in BlackRock. I like change. I like shareholder positive change. And then EARN is a new collateralized loan obligation group who also does other forms of bonds. So municipal bonds, real estate, huge bond company and private lender. This ticks a lot of our boxes. Bonds, CLO, bonds and other stuff, bonds and CLOs. All right, so you kind of get the drift there. Now, last week I talked about EARN being a rebranded ticker. They were a mortgage related company. They switched to a CLO company some point in the last month to 2 months. And there's not a ton of info on the company as it stands, as to what they own specifically, although there is a breakdown I'll go over here in a little bit. So, of the given options, our portfolio covers the gambit in bonds. We've got, if I go over here, so it's bonds, loans, BDCs. We've got utilities and energy transfer. We have real estate, and we have tech through one fund that's not currently on the list. We already own a CLO fund in OXLC, but it's currently in premium territory. And this is our portfolio, which I know I owe you a portfolio review based on the last round of acquisitions. But I'll slowly scroll through. You can pause the video as wherever you want and see what we have and when we bought it. All right, and I will scroll over. You can kind of see that. There we go. This there. If it's got an ex-div date in May, we bought it May 29th. Oh, no, there we go, May 27th. So you can kind of see the total ROI. And I don't want to minimize the screen because it's going to make it really small. But you can kind of see the overall portfolio. I know it's a lot of info at once, so just go ahead and pause it and look at whatever you want to look at. And then when you scroll back up, which if you were like, hey, don't scroll back up, just go back and pause the video. But you can also look at our overall profit loss for each ticker. And I like the individual lines. And we could just look at the overall fund of how we're doing, but I like the individual lines because I like the data. All right, so we already own OXLC, but it's currently in premium land. So is it really worth adding another collateralized loan obligation fund at the moment? I'm going to go down to OXLC and show you that. Still off the master list. Current price, current net asset value, right? Currently in premium territory. So of what I wanted to show you up top, like that's a lot of different tabs than normal. Normally it's pretty limited up top. So I wanted to show you first, everybody talk, well, maybe not everybody. A lot of people talk about CLOs or collateralized loan obligations, but what are they really? So you get this really nice long definition from Wikipedia, which is really similar to Investopedia, but even so, that doesn't really help. So I looked a little further. I think the top one offers you the best one, which go figure it's at BlackRock, but you get an investment vehicle that owns below grade investment floating rate loans. But this second one mirrors everything so far. It's a complex structured finance product that's backed by a pool of loans or other assets and sold to institutional investors. So it's an investment grade it's a investment product that's bought and sold. So like any other fund or any other loan, but they're also more akin to bonds, which I guess you could argue a bond is a loan. Like, and that's not my point to get into. Um, so as I track everything in the portfolio, week to week, month to month, not much changed overall. Which I'll be honest. I mean, there's 400 different funds. It's hard to remember the values and the data for every one of them. But what I saw overall was bond prices went down a little bit, and the majority of the CLO funds are increasing in value. But I typed my question opposite. Why would CLO fund prices decrease? It's a complex investment vehicle in the sense that everybody talks around the subject. Very few people actually get into the meat of the subject. And I wish I had saved my screenshot earlier because I mean, I asked this question, we'll say like 2 o'clock, and then my computer went haywire. So I asked it again at 3 o'clock and got a completely different answer. I saw the same articles, but I saw a completely different AI overview. So Nuveen offers an interesting article, and it's got a lot of data. It's got a lot of pretty pictures. I want to say the woman who wrote this offers a decent article, but if I related it to a sports metaphor, it's not a knockout in the sense of like she could have title fought it. Mike Tyson beat the crap out of everybody and just completely knocked it out. But instead, it's kind of like you knock your opponent down, but you don't really decide the match. But the biggest takeaway I found was this statement highlighted. The other interesting remarks I found is this. Now, this article completely goes against what the current AI statement is, right? Like what? So why buy CLOs when the Fed is cutting rates? And that doesn't really jive with everything else. So even among the experts, there's a huge, I don't, it's not a conflict. It's just you get so many different points of view. No one really knows what they're talking about, or at least no one really seems to know what they're talking about. But if we relate them to bonds and we think of where interest rates are, and that it's an extremely specified form of investment that's more akin to bonds or loans, then it would make sense to add it now before the Fed cuts rates. I mean, that's really what I can boil it down to. So if the Fed cuts rates, everything does better. Credit card rates, home loan rates, car rates, general loan rates, like you want to buy a TV or a dishwasher, those rates all improve. But the market as a whole does better. Pick your investment category. Lower rates mean better prices. Pending your expert, most of these people are looking at the S&P 503. They're not looking at closed-end funds. They're looking at investments as it relates to individual funds or individual companies offering collateralized loan obligations or senior loans or bonds or pick your debt structure. They're looking at individual companies, not closed-end funds who have access to everything. So it's kind of like if I was buying Costco and Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Berkshire Hathaway and Amazon and Taiwan Semi, then yeah, everything added up over time is a lot of money. And in a lower rate environment, all of those companies will go up regardless of what they sell. But in a CF environment, I can get all of those. Well, I don't want to box myself in and say I can get all of them. I can get access to a lot of companies that would otherwise cost me a small fortune to invest in at a really cheap rate and that pay a dividend, right? And that pays a dividend. And the goal is overall growth, but at the same time, the goal is the dividend. In bond land, if and I don't want to screw the pooch on this, if rates go down, bond prices go up. There's mixed speculation of whether the dividends go away or whether the dividends get better. From my experience, the dividends get better. On the expert side of things, the dividends don't seem to be as great. But maybe that's the difference between closed-end funds and single investments. Maybe. If I close out these tabs, close out Nuveen, close out Van Eck, which I don't really read, but I found this article. It made me wonder of the top two CLOs in the current target, or say the remaining target list. It made me wonder how they really compare on securitized or potential collateralized loan obligations. And before I even get there, note this little ad on the side. I've never seen this Nuveen ad, but I find it really interesting since we're talking about closed-end funds. And of course, Nuveen wants you to invest in their funds, right? But invest in actively managed closed-end funds, their funds, designed to provide attractive cash flow for the long term. Well, that's what everybody really wants. Like everybody wants growth, everybody wants equity, everybody wants growth, but everybody wants cash flow, right? If you had neutral growth and amazing cash flow, unless you're just selling off your portfolio, which would be why you really focus on equity or growth, right? It grows more, you sell off more. But if you render growth not obsolete, but if you render growth irrelevant, right? So whether it goes up or down, people want cash flow. And that's the huge advantage of closed-end funds because the pick your straight line, the market's going to do this, right? So regardless of where the market is, if you're selling your portfolio, you're selling your principal and decreasing your money going forward and decreasing your dividends. If it doesn't matter what the market's doing and you're still collecting a dividend, then you have cash flow. All right, so EIC is a CLO, gosh, just a CLO powerhouse to the extent that even in their diversity, they are below 2% for everything they're invested in, which is pretty amazing. If we get into this one, which is a completely brand new, rebranded, it used to be Earn in the sense that it used to be Earn as it relates to mortgages and real estate. Now it's Earn as related to CLO investments. And it's when I read the missive and the stuff online, it's all CLOs. But if you will look at it, it's not all CLOs. And I can't really look more because it's just not here. But it's not as CLO as it would have you believe, which I found interesting. So I looked at our other bond funds. BRW has some CLO, and I'm going to close these out as I go. DSL, some CLO. Let's see, 26, that's like 94. 18, FCO. Oh, look at that. That's pretty similar. Close double line. 26, 20, 38. That's pretty close. That's pretty similar. This is the real estate portfolio, which still does some securitized investments. Interesting. Highland Global. Yeah, it's there, but not by much. Oxford Lane, right? What we already have at 93. Vertis, which is a hybrid fund, like 75, 25 stocks bonds, or bonds and stocks. There we go. Still also has some securitized investments. So it's not as foreign as it sounds. It's just, I think people don't talk about it as much because it's so strange of an investment. CLOs deal in tranches and it deals with leveraged debt, and people worry about defaults, but there's not a lot of defaults with CLOs. So I don't know. Well, is my computer freaking out? I really hope not, because I don't want to record this video. So we're going to find out. Maybe it's freaking out with all the tabs. So I don't know if Earn is what we're going to go with. And to be quite honest, we're not investing tomorrow. But now that I'm aware of it, EIC is on my radar. Uh, they did have a recent dividend cut. I mean, I pulled up the full timeline of when they've been around. They got started just before COVID. And as you can imagine, that really kind of skews their overall pricing history because if you look at just the last year, it's like, oh, that's amazing. It's all premium. But if you look at the other stuff, like the COVID timeline, yeah, it went into discount because of obvious reasons. Fears of default, shutdown economies, uncertainty, the works, as everybody else went through. But if we're looking at just recently, say even the last 3 years, uncertain economy, booming economy, even through all of that, it's still a premium area. But since we just bought, and since it's brand new to my radar, and honestly, because I want to look at it more, it'll stay on my radar. But it is something interesting to consider because regardless of expert, it seems like a great long-term investment. And then it becomes, I mean, like anything else, like when would you sell it? Well, it's still a bond-based investment, so it's got to follow the bond market overall. Uh, you look at the long-term rates, and regardless of experts saying like a lower rate will hurt things, that seems foolish advice to me. Lower rates helps everybody. Um, and you can respond back with whatever comment you want to make on that. I mean, I get it. Like I have a different perspective on that. But lower rates helps everybody. Uh, if you can make money with, if you can make money in a high interest rate environment, you can rake on a low interest rate environment. So I'm not going to come out and be like, hey, it's a done deal. We're going to buy this. but at the same time, it's still something that I'm heavily looking at and I'm interested. So if I can close out some more tabs, we'll get back to our list sorting. So here's how it stands. So we've got earn, which is interesting, but I don't know enough. And then it comes down to lots of factors. It comes down to where you think the market is and where you think it's going. It comes down to what you might already have inside your portfolio. Like BRW, we already have in both, but it's currently priced higher than it is in both. EIC's new, that's higher than where it normally is. That's higher. That's still a great dollar cost average. These are great dollar cost averages right now for us. If you were going to force me and really hold my feet to the fire and make me pick something, I would pick municipal bonds because it's a, well, and even HFRO. Let me look at my portfolio again, our portfolio. No, I would stay if you were going to hold my feet to the fire, I would pick up another 100 to 200 shares for the municipal bonds and round that out. Let's see, 784, 723, 514. Is that 892 maybe? Yeah, 892. And at 400 shares of a CLO fund, that's really not that much in the grand scheme of things. So pick your CLO group, adding another CLO group at 100 to 200 shares outside of just the general cost of whatever it would be is not that much money in the grand scheme of things. So we're not investing tomorrow. I'm going to do my best to keep myself accountable to an investing schedule and not just buy the next shiny coin. In the sense of we wanted targeted specific investments into the market at almost like 1 month to 1.5 month intervals to really catch the market at different times, time the market at different times, end up really with a dollar cost average approach as opposed to dumping everything into the market at once. And I'm going to do my best to hold that or to hold myself accountable to that outside of the funds we already own, just having another crazy day. Uh, Tech blip, foreign currency blip, whatever. I mean, if there's another blip in the market where everything just where investors panic and prices drop, then yeah, we'll reconsider. But I'm going to do my best to hold myself accountable to our investing schedule and not simply buy the next shiny coin. Because I'll admit, this is tempting. I still think the market, I still think the economy is healthier than presented. I still think the economy is due to break out. And I see bright things in our future with as much manufacturing and infrastructure as we are onboarding. I see so much potential in the US economy, which would get reflected in the market. The key to that is the Fed dropping rates. And we've seen President Trump and Secretary Bessent do their best to push the Fed to drop rates. And for whatever reason, they are holding their ground. And outside of leverage and power, I can't see a reason why. The gosh, CPI rates, core inflation rates have all dropped. Inflation has dropped. Uh, Everybody but the Fed has finally admitted that tariffs don't cause inflation. Uh, the Fed is trying to use every excuse they can find to say that they're worried about inflation, and it's just not working. Jobs report looked amazing. Uh, Outside of Congress increasing spending, which if we could get Congress to curtail spending and drop taxes, that'd be amazing. right? Um, but the economic uncertainty angle just seems to be a dud in the water. But it's what the Fed's still going with. So until the Fed drops rates, we're going to see the market be uncertain because for whatever reason, the Fed is uncertain. But if we can get the Fed to drop rates, everything takes off. And with lower, I mean, everything takes off. So it makes sense to be in everything, which I get that. That's almost like willy-nilly diversity, and I hate that. Um, Real estate, bonds, loans, CLOs, municipal bonds, all of those will do better in a lower rate environment. That being said, everything else will do better. So it's figuring out the best place for your money now, knowing that eventually the Fed will cut rates. It's the hope that they'll cut rates, but it's also the realization that at some point they're going to have to cut rates because at some point, whatever whatever crappy rationalization they're using, whatever fear model they're using, no one's going to buy it. I mean, all they're doing is, from my angle, all they're doing is rendering themselves obsolete. The Fed is supposed to the Fed itself is supposed to set rates to control or set rates based on the data all surrounding inflation, right? So in a sense, the Fed is controlling inflation. The Fed is supposed to control inflation to where it's 2% or less. But one, they didn't do it. Two, they caused it. Three, they made it worse. Four, they responded late. And five, now they're not doing a damn thing about it. So if they're not doing their job to control inflation, then why do we have the Federal Reserve? If their job is to do this, right? If their job is to control or limit inflation, and if their job is to control rates surrounding the data based upon inflation, so if they're not performing both dual mandates, self-imposed dual mandates, if they're not doing their job, why do we use them? Right? So the longer they hold out, the more the realization, or however you want to say it, but the longer they hold out, the more people realize that the Fed's not doing a fucking thing to do their own fucking job. So why do we use them? But in the meantime, it's the same thing. What's the best thing we can buy in the current market for the long game? And that's still bonds. That's still bond proxies, and it looks like CLOs. So I'll leave you with that. This is the target list for the week. It really depends on how this fits into your existing portfolio. And if we were buying, if you held my feet to the fire, I would pick municipal bonds because that's what fits best in this current portfolio. This is highly tempting. I mean, it's highly tempting, but I honestly just don't know enough about it yet. So my goal is to learn more about CLOs between now and the next time we buy. And then, and outside of a blip, it's still not going to be next week either. Soonest time we would buy would be 2 weeks from now, if not 3 weeks from now, and we'll see. I'm not going to chain myself to the not going to chain myself to the wall in that either. We'll do as we need to do based upon the market, uh, which really sounds like I'm being wishy-washy, and it's not my goal to be wishy-washy at all. It's my goal to be transparent and honest and upfront. We're not buying tomorrow. I need every expert has a different viewpoint on CLOs, and I need to know more of them and learn more. And if you were going to force me to do it, I would buy a municipal bond, but at the same time, you're not going to force me to do anything. Um, but of what makes the list, municipal bonds, real estate, bonds, BDCs, bonds, and what is turned into a hodgepodge of other stuff. A high level of securitized debt um, that would include CLOs and honestly a well diversified CLO portfolio. And then bonds, they do closed end funds, crypto, minerals, metals, a lot of things as well. So make the best choice for you. And if you want to offer comments about why this list or how did I get here, or you have comments about any of these funds or comments about whatever I'm saying, by all means, post it. So that's all I got for the week. Hopefully you find these instructive. Hopefully you find these helpful. And it's kind of the same thing. And honestly, if not, if you don't find this helpful at all, then please drop me a comment and help me get better. So I wish you a great week. I wish you well on your endeavors. And just to circle back to the beginning, it's very daunting taking on your own investments. I mean, as you can see, like I'm unwilling to commit to EIC simply because I don't know enough about collateralized loan obligations. Not to say the wrong C word. Um, I don't know enough about CLOs, and I want to learn more or try to learn more about a very complex investment vehicle that no one really seems to define in simple terms, right? But I want to learn more before I buy that on my own. So never be afraid to say you don't know something. Don't buy something like don't buy it blind simply because somebody else likes it. Uh, don't be afraid to do your own research. Quite honestly, whether I say it or somebody else says it, you should research it. And that's across the board. Like, don't just, it's a hard thing in current society. Like, you want to trust what people say. But at the same time, if someone says it, you should also go and do your own investigation. Like, don't just take somebody's word for it. Let's see what else. Yeah, and I get it. Like, it's a daunting thing to take on the responsibility of managing your own portfolio, but at the same time, it's still very much worth it. It's scary, which makes you a cautious investor because you want to do well. So it really, all the stuff that you might invest in because, hey, that sounds great, you kind of cut out because you realize how important it is for your investments to do well. You can't just invest in everything hoping that something lands, right? You've got to be really cautious and specific and focused in your investments because you care about that money being there and lasting. So that makes you more savvy, that makes you more aware, that makes you more mindful than any random herd investor who's just throwing money around hoping it sticks. Right? I know it's scary, but please let me encourage you. Do the work, be willing to do the work, and take on your own investments. It is so much better. So it's easier than people say, but there's still a lot of work involved. But it's so rewarding to do your own stuff and then watch it work. If you can develop a strategy that works for you and then you stick with it, it works. You just got to, it, it's encouraging because when I see the portfolio, I mean, I see the stuff we're ahead in, I see the stuff we're behind in, but I look at our overall individual growth as investors these last 3 to 4 years. It's incredible. And that's not all represented in a portfolio. I mean, you're seeing some of that growth, you're seeing great picks, you're seeing untimely buys, you're seeing stuff that I went on a limb on my own on. You're seeing a lot of stuff in our portfolio, but there's so much other growth that you're not seeing in the portfolio that you as a person will see and know, and you'll feel in other parts of your life. It is so worth it to be your own self-directed manager of funds, manager of investments, as opposed to somebody else doing it for you. So bare minimum, look into it. Don't just take my word for it. Look into it and see if you feel up to the task. So whatever you have for the week, I hope it goes well. Whatever you have planned, I hope it goes well. And I wish you a restorative summer, whether you're at work or not. I wish you a restorative summer where you can really focus on the stuff that needs to be focused on and make progress where you need to make progress. So have a great week, everybody. I will see y'all on another video. Hopefully a sooner video than next Saturday, but I will see y'all on another video. Bye-bye.